Shut up and sit down.
Kabooyaka. Hello, everybody. How you doing? Street certified dope Dr. Louis Delgado here with you, and this is Dope and Dharma, the couch live version of Dope and Dharma here on our, well, we're doing this on a Friday, but it's playing on a Monday. Trinity.
Yeah, it depends on where you're listening, but yes.
But it's playing on a Monday on WOKB FM in Orlando.
No. Well, it's 100.6, all right? No, oh my gosh.
Wow.
100.7. Wow. 1680 AM or 100.7 FM. We're out of practice.
Did you wait, you're the one that just messed it up.
Well, you said WOKB FM.
I did.
Which I guess
I didn't say FM, I said WOKB.
Oh, you said FM. But that's okay.
But it is on FM and AM.
That's what threw me for a loop.
Right.
Because normally when you say the call signs, it's on the 1681.
Yeah, that's Trinity Phillips, everybody, the Dharma guy.
What's up?
You know, how peaceful and serene he is. And of course, Shaw, the producer, back at the station at WOKB. What's up, Shaw? How you doing? Anyway, I miss not seeing Shaw in person. I miss, but
right.
I don't miss the drive, Shaw. Don't miss the drive.
Yeah, I don't miss the drive.
But anyway, hello everybody at WOKB. Hope you're having a lovely day. We are doing this in advance, so it's not currently live. We're doing it on a Friday. It's because it's time to go on vacation, Trinity. Time to go.
I apparently didn't get that memo, so
you didn't?
No,
no wonder you're not here because I'm ready to leave.
Yeah, I will not be going on vacation.
I was wondering where you're at.
Enjoy, I guess.
Thank you.
I will go in support. I'll step out my backyard and put my foot on some grass for you.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate you. Look, it's the second time we've rented a minivan, Trinity. The minivan is the way to go, by the way.
Yes, it is.
It's you know what? I don't know why it ever got the bum rap that it got. The minivan not only is a cost effective as far as gas fuel compared to other vehicles.
Did you get the hybrid one?
No, I did not. But both sides open up, right? Which is another added advantage. Yeah. And the trunk space for your luggage is actually more than the Tahoe that we had rented a couple years back. So
yeah, I found out last trip that we all made as a family. We went to Tennessee to stay in the mountains, and I got a hybrid minivan for the trip.
Right.
And oh my god, it is so much room, so much space.
Yep.
It cost us like not even a third of what the gas would have cost in the other. It was amazing. Like hands down. Yeah. Hybrid minivan is the way to go for taking a family trip.
All right. Sure. Well, you keep on saying hybrid, but I don't have a hybrid, so I'm going
to say hybrid. I'm telling the gas prices.
All right. I got to be grateful for what I got too. They got to be grateful for what I got.
Sure.
But I am grateful for it. And like I said, the luggage space on this thing is just so much better than the big vehicle. I mean, I don't know why I ever had Expeditions and Suburbans and Jeep Grand Cherokees, and now I have a 4Runner and we rented Tahoes and stuff in the past. When really the minivan has more space.
You're not even playing either because that's why I got the minivan.
It goes deep in the back. It goes deep.
Yeah, that's why I got the minivan because they were going to give me an Armada. This massive Pathfinder Armada. I'm like, okay. And then when I looked at the trunk space, it was like nothing.
Tiny.
I was like, how? What am I? I can't even put a bag back here.
Right.
So yeah, that's why I got the minivan.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Anyway, that's people they're not tuning in to listen to.
No, they're not.
My rental car situation, but anyway. Anyway, I'm excited. I'm on vacation mode. But before we go, because that's my therapy, Trinity. It's my therapy. It's the therapist therapy. It's the therapist therapy is to get away. I am a certified addictions professional, do counseling for a living, or at least I have for the last, I don't know, since 1990, 91, that time frame. So that's a long time, Trinity.
Right.
But you had brought up the other day that you wanted to discuss therapy, and so I'm going to kind of let you guide the ship a little bit on this one, Trinity, because this was your idea, and I wanted to kind of know like what you were thinking in the first place of why you wanted to talk about therapy today.
Yeah, I mean, so the idea of therapy, right? It's the reason why I felt the need to discuss it is because it's one of those like almost like a dirty little secret, right? Like we've all heard the phrase, everybody should go to therapy,
Right.
And so we're all aware to an extent of what therapy is, or we're all aware of what the possibilities could be as far as the outcome.
Okay.
But I think where it gets kind of lost is I think a lot of people don't know, like what therapy actually entails. I think most people's idea of therapy is whatever they watch on television. which is not always an accurate representation. Maybe they're not aware of that there's like several different kinds of therapy.
Right.
And then obviously there's a stigma, somehow you're weak or less than if you have to go talk to somebody. I think those barriers are important to address because I hear a lot of misnomers about what therapy is or isn't.
Right.
And then of course the other uncomfortable one to discuss is not all therapists are created equal, right? So
Yeah.
whatever interaction you may or may not have had in the past is not necessarily indicative of all therapy.
Mm-hmm.
So I just it's a multifaceted thing. So I just thought it would be
Right.
a good thing to talk about because all the shows that we do revolve around some sort of like self-awareness and self-betterment, things of that nature. And I think we'd be missing a boat if we didn't at least address therapy.
Well, let's first talk about the stigma attached to it because I think that
Sure.
all too often, as a Latino person, we always feel like we're different. As a Latino, in other words, we always feel like whatever we do culturally, like for some reason, you as a white person, you don't do that. We're like, have you ever noticed that? Like, we'll go, oh, as Latinos, we do this, or
Yeah, it's a Spanish thing.
yeah, like Latinos, we do
Yeah.
this, and Black people do this, and then it's like almost always assuming like we know what you do.
Right.
And I don't think we do. I think stigma is culture. It's in every culture. Now, I can speak more for the Latino culture because obviously, that's the only one I'm like born into and raised into. So that's it's my culture. So as a Latino, I'm looking at therapy, and it's like it's not something that we really. I don't know. It is viewed in a lot of spaces as a weakness, or almost like you're telling on yourself. Like you're not supposed to like talk about it. Like esos son secretos de la familia. You know what I mean? Like those are family secrets. Like you don't go. You get concerned. Like what are you gonna go say? You know what I mean? Like you're not supposed to say that like out loud or to anyone. And if you are gonna say it, you're supposed to go do it with a priest. Right? Because like we feel pretty certain that the priest, he's not gonna say anything to anybody. But the therapist, I don't know. It's like I didn't grow up thinking that the therapist was somebody you can go, tell him all your nasty little secrets or whatever you got to get off your chest or family issues that you don't want getting out in public, and then not using it against you, right? Like priest, you feel pretty certain that that's not going to happen.
Right.
But I don't remember ever even talking about therapist as a kid.
Yeah, so I don't, just my own knee-jerk reaction to that, just from my own experience. I don't know if it's as much. I don't know if you can whittle it down to different races or even genders. It's been my experience. It kind of crosses all of those boundaries, and it sounds weird, obviously, or it sounds like obvious, but it's been my experience. Regardless of anything else, it really does fall down to two categories: either you're okay and into therapy, or you're adamantly opposed to it. It doesn't, to me. You could be on either side, and it doesn't matter if you're male, female, white, black, Spanish. It doesn't matter. It's just it's a mentality that you either are absolutely opposed to it or you absolutely think it's great. And you have your justifications and reasons for that. Now that might be cultural, but the end result is you're either adamantly opposed and like think it's weakness or it's stupid or they can't help me. What do they know? Blah, blah, blah. Or it's, oh my gosh, you really should go. It's the greatest thing ever. Like there doesn't seem to be a middle ground. And there doesn't seem to be any like major factors that would make you lean either way. Because I know just as many men as women that are into it or not into it.
Right.
I know many different cultures. It really is just, it's one of those weird things, man. That, like you're either all about it or you absolutely detest it. It's a weird thing.
Well, before I became one, I think I did a lot of therapy before I ever became one, to be honest with you. And what I mean by doing a lot of therapy, I mean, I think I played therapist in a very different way. Like if you were one of my friends and you came to me with a problem or an issue or something was bugging you out, I gave you something to drink, gave you something to smoke, gave you something to snort, gave you a woman or something like that. And then that kind of like, I thought
you were the pharmacist. That's not therapist.
I thought I was being a good therapist though, Trinity. I think some people equate some of their methods of venting and processing information to like as a substitution to therapy.
Yeah, I don't think
instead of going to a therapist, I think they go to the bar.
Yeah,
instead of going to a therapist, they go hang out with their boys.
Yeah, I don't think people. That's the other misnomer with therapy, right? Is they don't realize that there's a difference between distraction and actual closure,
Yeah,
right? Or
right.
solution. Like, those are two different things. If you
Yeah.
go to therapy and you find solutions to it, you walk away feeling better in that,
Yeah.
because it almost doesn't arise anymore, right? Or if it does,
Right.
you've got the tools necessary to cope with it. Whereas the distractions of self-medication, all you're doing is just like, hey, look over here, but once those things wear off, it's all still there, and you're left with the same tools that you had prior to the use.
Plus, you want people to agree with you.
Of course, don't we all?
And if you're partying with them, I mean, they're supposed to just agree with you, right?
Of course.
Right?
And depending on what you're complaining about, they probably will.
Well, you've said it many times. I've said it many times.
Yep.
Anybody can go to the bar and complain about their women and get the whole bar going with you. I mean,
Yep.
that's the easiest thing in the world is to go say, women, and then everybody will be like, yeah. They'll
Yeah.
jump right in there with you. And I'm sure women can do the same thing. They start talking negative about men with a lot of women,
course.
over some margaritas.
Yep.
And next thing you know, like they all agreeing with each other.
Yep. We're all terrible.
Only the difference is that maybe one of them is secretly then going to call your man and go like, I wouldn't do that to you. If you were my man,
Yeah, right.
I would be different.
Yeah. That's a different show, though.
That's a whole different. That's a reality show.
Yeah, right.
So yeah, there's a lot of stigma attached to therapy, and I think the biggest thing is I think, just like you said, people just don't really understand what happens in therapy, because I think some people think that therapists give advice. I think there's a lot of therapists that think that their job is to give advice.
The bad ones do.
Right. That is not your position to give advice. It's to help someone process through whatever emotions they're experiencing, kind of explain their methods of processing and dealing with it or going through it, and kind of help them see whether it's a positive, negative, or if it's something useful or not useful for them to proceed that way forward, or maybe by just bouncing it off someone who's non-judgmental in it, or they don't have an emotional stake in it. They can direct questions and direct responses in a way that just help you kind of keep talking, keep mentally processing while you're speaking. And I almost akin it to, how like when you defrag a computer, Trinity? Like,
Wow.
Well, we don't do it anymore. We don't do it anymore, right? They do it naturally, right? Computers kind of like do it.
Well, I got a Mac, so yeah. I don't
Yeah, but remember when we used to have to defrag the computer because, like, by opening a bunch of files, they kind of like get spread everywhere. So it's almost like that with memories and thoughts and things that have happened in your life. As they occur, you put them in certain places. But as time moves on and you grow and you mature and you have different responsibilities, and the world is now different for you as the older you that you've now become, where you put it at 7 years old or where you stored it at 22 years old is not the same place that you'd probably put it or store it at 50 years old. Right? And so when you talk about it again, it allows you, when you put it back to where it goes, your brain naturally sticks it in a different place because you naturally store things in a different place at 50 than you do at 7, 9, 10, 22, whatever. And so the brain knows how to do this. You don't have to work so hard to put that emotion or thought in a different place. You just have to communicate about it, right? And process through it and experience whatever emotions you're having with it without someone telling you you're not allowed to feel that way. You're not allowed to think that way. You're not allowed. Don't cry. Stop it. Don't talk about that. So you're allowed to just free to express, free to feel. And then by doing that, if they can help you pack it back nicely, you'll store it in a different place. Therefore, it affects you differently moving forward. And that's truly what, in a nutshell, kind of like in a real basic way, what therapy kind of does.
Yeah, I just think that traditional therapy's got a really bad PR team, right? You know what I mean? Like, because we all love therapy.
Yeah,
we love it.
Wait. Why do you say that?
We love it because
that even made me cringe, and I'm a counselor.
We love it because when we look, the difference is we don't like what we would think traditional therapy. Okay. But therapy, anytime you call your friend and ask for advice, that's therapy, man. Anytime you complain to your friends or your family about stuff and you're trying to talk it out and kind of figure out what it is or bounce out, that's therapy, man. All these motivational speakers and these TED Talks that you see that people talking about their experiences and how they processed it and everything, what it means, that's therapy. And we all love it. It's got millions and millions and millions of views all across the world. So it's been established that we can't get enough of it. The problem is traditional talk therapy where you actually go and pay a therapist and sit down, they have the worst PR team ever. Because every time you watch TV shows, it's always the same, like, well, how does that make you feel? And it just sounds cheesy, right? Like, it sounds like it's ineffective. It sounds stupid. And the only reason why it really sounds stupid is because we're all, our emotional IQs are in the gutter, right? Like, it sounds stupid because when you actually ask them how you feel about that, dirty little secret is most of us, we don't really know. And that's why it sounds stupid, is because we don't know. And instead of admitting we don't know, oh, that's dumb. That's not going to work. Whatever. How do I feel about it? You know, and that's the thing, is when you finally start to talk to somebody, you're uncovering those feelings. And there's more feelings in the world than just anger and happy. Right.
Well, keep going with that, because it sounds like you're frustrated about it. Keep going with that.
Exactly. But it's just funny to me because, you know, when I hear people's interpretations of what they think therapy is, it couldn't be further oftentimes from the truth, like of what it actually is.
Right.
And then typically when they do break that barrier and they go in, it's almost always the same result. And it's like, oh my gosh, it really helped me, man. Like, yeah, I did. Well, duh. Like, we've been telling you that. And like I said, we know that, right? Like, all these motivation, just type in motivational whatever on YouTube, and you're going to get millions of videos with millions of, that's therapy, guys. You know, the difference is, you know, instead of watching a video that's one way, that's completely generic and not related to you in any way, shape, or form, when you go to a good therapist, it's the same thing, but it's tailored to you, right? It's relatable to what you're talking about and how you're feeling. That's the difference. So it's just like the same, but better. You know, it's like, instead of going your neighbor who kind of works on cars, you're going to an actual mechanic. Right? Like, yeah, your neighbor that's working on cars, they're going to give it their best shot, but they're not, you know, they're not certified or whatever, so they don't know what they don't know, and they could potentially, you know, steer you in the wrong direction. Towards the mechanic, yeah, you're going to have to actually pay for it, but it's going to save you money in the long run because it's going to be done correctly. Like, to me, I think that's the difference. But they got a really bad PR team, man, because I've never seen a movie ever of like a cool therapist. You know what I mean? It's like, they're so cool. It's like, yeah, I want to go talk to, I want to be friends with that guy. Right. It's always the ones that they make look cool are like I said, they're therapy, but they're like roundabout therapy. It's always like the ex gang member or the ex, you know, prisoner that's there talking to everybody and telling them why their life is that's therapy, guys. That's what that is. You know, so those things are glorified, but the traditional, make an appointment, go sit down on a couch, you know, heaven forbid, or a chair or whatever it is, and talk to somebody. It's just like, I'm not going to do that. That's stupid. It's like, well, you're wrong.
Right. Well, you know, I'm just trying to think in my head what movie or what show, but I think you're kind of right. I think
I've seen a couple.
I mean, that woman in The Sopranos was pretty cool most of the time.
Yeah.
Not all the time, but most of the time.
Yeah.
You know, What About Bob was pretty funny.
Oh wow, I haven't seen that in a long time. Well, there's a show on Showtime actually right now. It's called, I think it's called either In Treatment or no, not In Treatment, couples counseling or something. It's a woman up in, I believe it's New York, and these couples have allowed cameras to kind of come in and videotape the process.
I can never do
that. I know you don't like that.
I mean, this is the way I do it. I mean, this is why this is called The Couch Live. This show started back in 1999 because what it was is we allowed people to call up the radio station live and talk about whatever they wanted to talk about on the radio without giving their real name, without anybody being able to see them. And you know, me and the co-host at the time were able to kind of like help process some of that information out. That's why it was called The Couch, because traditionally we all have couches, right? At least I do. And then it was live because it wasn't recorded, right? But I'm thinking that you know what makes a good therapist is someone that allows you to know that you have the answers. You have all the right answers inside you. You have the responses that you need. Maybe not what that you want, but you have all the responses that you need inside you. You're doubting yourself a little bit. You may get clouded in being able to see it clearly because you get busy with your life. You get busy with your responsibilities. You get busy with your excuses. You get busy with your defense mechanisms. You get busy with the way you're hiding your pain from the world, and therefore you're hiding it from yourself as well. And so that just all has to get moved out of the way a little bit. It's almost like if you've ever seen dirty water and then you just kind of move the water like this and drink it. I'll give you an example.
Are you out there drinking dirty water?
Yeah, let me get,
Don't do that.
Don't worry, I got a story with it. So when I was a kid, wearing my little cowboy hat from Texas, 12-year-old kid or something like that, feeling like a pretty tough kid. Go to Puerto Rico to visit my uncle, right? I'm half Puerto Rican, half Mexican, so I'm going on the Puerto Rican side. And my uncle has this big old dairy farm. And one of the things my uncle likes to do, my Uncle Junior, is like, he likes to mess with me, right? He likes to put me in really bad situations and laugh the hell out of me. And that's kind of the nature of my family.
I love where the story's going. Keep going.
So, we're out in the dairy farm. We're doing all kinds of work with the cows and all that stuff. And we're tired and we're thirsty. So we go up to the trough. And he's like, we can drink from this. And I'm like, no, we can't drink from that, brother. That's there was crap. There's literal feces floating in the trough. The cows have pooped in there. I'm like, there's no way I'm drinking that water. And my uncle's like, no, look. And he kind of moves the feces to the side like this. He's, moves it. And then he puts his hands in there, grabs like water that looks clean now. And he drinks it. He's like, just like that. Come on, do it. Don't be a wimp kind of thing. Right.
Right.
So, I mean, you got to do it. Right. You can't not do it at that point. Right, Trinity? So I do the same thing, move it. And then I drink it. Now, I'm using that for the point of the story that says that's the way kind of therapy is. You kind of move everything to the side and then you get to the clarity, right? The other part is this, though. Then he starts laughing. I'm like, what are you laughing at? He goes, look where the water's coming from. And he points down to like a little lake, right? And that's where the water's getting pumped from. And in the lake is a bunch of cows pooping in that water. So that's therapy. Right when you think, you got a decision here, so you kind of clear out the initial mess, right? And you get to it, you go, oh, okay, so I made a good decision. But you got to go deeper than that, the source of where that's coming from. So one thing is where you can get to on a normal life, because that's all you allow yourself to get to, right? Because you're busy. You're busy paying your bills. You're busy dealing with your relationships. You're busy dealing with your job. You're busy with the kids. You're busy with life. So you only have so much real time to go only dig so deep, process so deep, and make the decision that's right in front of you. But what therapy allows you to do is not only explain that a little bit better, talk about that a little bit better, process that a little bit better, but it allows you to then go to the source. And like, let's go to the source and now we can go deeper. Now that we trust each other a little bit more, right? You trust me more, right? I don't have to say that. I just know that you do by the way we communicate. I know that we've built rapport. I know that you have you have less boundaries, right? You're more vulnerable in our conversation. That tells me that you trust me. So now I know we can go deeper. And when we go deeper, we can find out where some of these decisions actually started from, where they came from, where some of these defense mechanisms came from, where, why is it that when there's yelling, you tend to respond a certain way? Why is it that when people walk away from you, you tend to respond a certain way? Why is it when someone wants to hug you or hold you or say they love you, you respond a certain way? When you go into someone's youth, you're able to get a more clear picture of how you got created, right? And it's not necessarily just the you that you want to show everybody, because the you that you want to show everybody is almost the you that you want to show yourself. It's not that you just want to show everybody else. You want to show that you to you, trying to convince yourself that it doesn't bother you anymore. You try to convince yourself that I'm not that little scared little kid anymore. I can't be hurt anymore. I'm tough. I'm cool. I'm good. You can't hurt me. And you try to walk around with that strength to show everybody you can't hurt me. But by doing that, what you don't understand is, to the real predators out there, all the predator sees is, oh, there's someone in pain.
Mm-hmm.
There's someone that I naturally now want to get close to and get them to trust me, because that's going to be even a juicier piece of meat than a vulnerable, wounded piece of meat. And that's the sickness of human-to-human contact untreated. Both sides require the therapist. Only one side thinks they're the victim, when really both sides are victims to the same kind of pain. Just one of them becomes the predator and one of them becomes the prey. But both of them pretty much started off with the exact same stimulus that created the problem. Does that make sense to
Yeah,
you?
of course.
Like,
Absolutely.
like if you were raised by a father that kicked you, one can become a person that then kicks their children. The other one becomes averse to kind of physical contact and stays away from anything that appears aggressive. It can create both.
Well, yeah, I mean, so for me, that's my like in a nutshell, right? If I had to simplify, to me, the benefits of therapy into like the smallest phrase I could think of, is it gives you the why, right? Like to me, I think that's extremely important, right? Like we always joke on mini shows when we talk about the dating world,
Right.
and how like when people say that there's no good men out there, there's no good women out there, there is. Your picker's just broken, right? Well, why? Like, have you ever asked yourself why your picker's broken? Like, have you ever asked yourself why that you keep ending up with the spouse that's just no good for you, right? Like, instead of convincing yourself that it truly is the fact that there's no good fill in the blank, right? No good men out there, no good women out there.
Right.
Because that just sounds unreasonable if you really stop to think about it, right? And there's billions of people on this planet to think that there's not a single good. Come on. Like, we all know that that's just what you tell yourself, which fine, helps you get through the day. But let's just be really honest. They are good ones out there, but for some reason, you're not picking them. You're not gravitating to them. You're not attracting them.
Right.
Why? What is it about your value system? What is it about the way you approach problems? What is it what you're exuding to the world that is bringing those people into your orbit and making you find them attractive?
Right.
And to me, I think that's what the therapy is, and it's the why. Not necessarily just with the spousal thing, but like you said, if you find yourself constantly responding to things in ways that are either A, unhealthy, or B, in ways that you don't really want to, right? Like if you've had a moment in your life where something happens and you responded, and then afterwards you're like, all right, I'm not going to do that anymore. I got to stop doing this. And then the next time it shows up, you respond the exact same way you told yourself you weren't going to. Why? Right? Like instead of just constantly just promising yourself and then failing, why don't you actually dig deep and figure out the cause behind it? Like, what is it that's leading me to do this?
Right.
And so I can kind of nip it in the bud and like you said, at the source. And to me, I think that's what therapy provides. It's not going to give you answers. It's not the coolest thing in the planet. Like you're not going to. No, it's basically it's going to fill in the blanks of why. Because your best friend who is biased because they like you and they hang out with you and they know like half of what you tell them is you're right. Like they don't know the internal dialogue that you don't let anybody know. They know what they see and they know the little bits that you're telling them. And because they're not trained, they don't realize that there's a whole other side to that coin that you're not talking about. You go to a professional who's trained to do that. They have no dog in this fight, right? There's no baggage. So they don't have a preconceived notion of who you are, what you're going through. They don't have a bunch of instances for them to look back to and judge your behavior that way. It's a completely clean slate. They're trained on human behavior, so they understand that like somebody yelling isn't necessarily a bad thing, right? Like your average everyday individual who is not a well-versed in this world or doesn't have the training, they hear somebody yelling and they're immediately going to go back to their own definition of that, if that's good or bad, right? They're yelling, oh, that must be a terrible, aggressive person. Or they're yelling, this is bad. Whereas somebody who's trained, we hear yelling and think, okay, they're emotional, something's hurt them, let's figure out what it is. That's the difference, is they're trained to know what to look for and how to appropriately handle it to get to a solution rather than shaming, judging, criticizing, or whatever it might be.
Yeah, and that's good. And and it's your choice that you're going to this person and you're paying them to tell you truth. If you're paying a therapist to lie to you, then you're doing it wrong.
Yeah, you're wasting money.
If you go to a therapist just to get them to agree with you or to be on your side, to make you feel better about yourself or your situation, you're doing it wrong, and the therapist is doing it wrong.
Yeah,
very unfortunate. Many times I've responded with, I'm not here to believe you or disbelieve you. Many times I've said that. I'm not here to believe or not believe you. I'm just here to listen to you and kind of process with you whatever you believe to be true. I'm going to help you with that information, with that person. I'm going to treat that person you give me. So if you lie to me, that's the person I'm going to be helping. So if that's not who you are, it's not going to help you. I could just assure you that, because we're going to be talking about a person that you think you are, but that's not the way you really think. That's not the way you really feel. That's not the way you're really acting out there. And it's not going to be very useful for you. Now, one of the things about therapy is a lot of times when it gets talked about is usually in a bad relationship kind of situation.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, that's usually when people agree to then go to a therapist. To a lot of people, that's their first ever contact with a therapist, like marital therapist, right? And the person that doesn't like that scenario is the person that feels like the therapist is beating up on them.
Yeah.
When in reality, both should probably feel like that leaving there initially, right? Because I would say most of the time, each person has his point.
Yeah, it's double-sided, man.
I can't think of any instances right off the top of my head that I can remember that only one person had a good point and the other person was completely wrong.
Oh, in my house, dude, I'm always right and she's always wrong.
Yeah, but just in case she might see this, I didn't want to say that. But so in that respect, both people should walk away with a little bit of, okay, that person, I feel like they heard me and they understood it, but man, this other thing, I don't know about that. Right. I got to think about that. You should walk away with some mental homework.
Yeah.
I'm not a big fan of other kinds of homework, but I'm a fan of mental homework, right? Sure. In other words, somehow logging in your head when you respond a certain way, just so we can kind of see in what other ways do you respond that way, or when else do you feel like this, just so you can get a better accurate picture of, is this response a positive and healthy response, or is this a response a trained response like Pavlov's dogs? Is it a conditioned response to a certain stimulation? And if it is, then you can kind of move it around. You can deal with it. You can process through it. You can almost basically manipulate it, retrain yourself to respond differently. Because I think that's the real issue. If we're going to go to therapy, it's because somehow we're mentally responding in a way that's hurting us, or we're physically responding in a way that's hurting us, meaning we don't like to deal with stress or anxiety or negative thoughts. So we drink, so we use drugs, so we want to escape. We don't feel validated in a relationship or hurt in our relationship or not getting something we feel like in our relationship. So we seek, approval or physical contact from another human being instead of the one that we've committed to. I mean, there's all kinds of reasons why, if we don't process certain thoughts or feelings properly, we're going to end up hurting ourselves and someone else in the process. That will happen if it's not working, because there's always someone that depends on you. First of all, you depend on you, right? So you depend on you to stay out of jail. You depend on you to stay financially well. You depend on you to stay safe. You depend on you to feel comfortable when you lay down in your bed at night. And if you're not feeling any of those things, you might be hurting yourself and not allowing that to occur. But then someone else might be depending on you for all those same reasons. And so if you're really not doing it well, not only is it affecting you, but it's affecting that other person that, that's their safety depends on you as well. Their finances depend on you as well. Their sense of security depends on you as well. And they have their own stuff. So now you take your own personal stuff, then you got someone else's personal stuff, and then you walk around saying, well, you didn't do this for me, and you should have done this, and you should have done this, and you should them to death. And they're shitting you to death. Now you're shitting on each other. Right? Yeah. And when you're shitting on each other, you don't get anywhere. All you're doing is telling the other person how they're supposed to be, and you're ignoring what you're actually doing. And hopefully when you're with a good therapist and you're being honest, instead of just going in there and complaining about the other person, they kind of redirect you to talk about what you're doing and get a good understanding of what you're doing. And then what you're going to do at first with your therapist is you're going to try to convince them that what you're doing is right. You're going to try to convince them, well, the reason I do that is because this is the way she is, and this is the way he is, and this is the way they are, and this is why I do that. And then at the end of the day, you're going to come out with you're going to find yourself say something real immature, and you're going to go, well, that's just the way I was raised. Or that's just the way I am. You're not going to have anything left, because your therapists, if they're good, they're going to get you in a point where you realize you have no reason to behave the way you do, except that you actually created virtue. You made a virtue out of something negative. Like you're gonna actually try to convince someone that not trusting other people is a virtue, that's a positive thing. You're going to say, no, this is why not trusting is a good thing. And they're going to make you challenge that. And that is a good relationship. When someone actually helps you challenge that, but not in a negative way, not in a confrontational way, just in a very natural, communicative way that helps you see that, wow, I created virtues out of negative defense mechanisms. Things that I required maybe at that moment in my life when I needed it because I didn't have any other skill set to deal with it. But now that I'm older in a different place, I don't need that skill set anymore. I don't need that defense mechanism anymore. It's like if you're 50 years old and you're still using the same blankie that you used at 5 years old and 7 years old, I'm going to let you know that that's what you're doing. You don't need that little teddy bear and that little blankie anymore. And our defense mechanisms are no different.
Yeah, you know what? While you were talking, I wrote down two things that I didn't want to forget, and one of them you touched on beautifully at the end there.
Okay.
Because that is the thing that I think another really major benefit from a therapeutic relationship is that it corrects that notion of that's just who I am. Because other than human, no, that's not who you are. That's who you've learned to be, right? Like, as a Homo sapien with a circulatory system and nervous, yes, that's who you are, right? This organic thing walking around. But the behaviors and the thoughts and everything else and how you look at things, no, you learn to do that. That through all the experiences you've been through in your life, your brain, to protect you, has learned how to respond to them in the most, what it views to be advantageous way possible. And like he said, at the time, it might have been advantageous for you. Like, it might have been no other choice but to shut down or to whatever.
Right.
But as you get older and you have more skills and you have more relationships, those same tactics are now hurtful. And whether you realize it or not, they're hurting you and the people around you potentially. And so for me, that's what it does, is it helps you erase this concept of that's just who I am. Or as he pointed out also, as making virtues out of terrible, terrible, terrible behavior. You know, like distrusting people or waiting for the other shoe to drop, you know, all these catastrophizing, like all these things that your brain has learned to do, protect itself, trying to convince other people that they're actually good when they're not. And even, you know, they're not deep down inside, whether you admit it to yourself or not, who knows? But the second one that I had written down that I don't think you did touch on is another thing that I've heard a lot of people, especially if they've been through something traumatic, right? Maybe they've been through something traumatic and they're fully aware that screwed them up. They're fully aware, like it hurt them in ways, but they're in denial in how that actually hurt them and how it's still hurting them today. Right. So they'll freely admit, oh yeah, that messed me up. But when you ask them how, they can't tell you or they won't tell you. Right. And then that same person oftentimes is reluctant to go to therapy because maybe the thing was so terrible that they don't want to relive it. They don't want to go in there and have to tell the whole thing and relive all that stuff again. And that keeps them from going back. So what I would say to that is, number one, you are reliving it every day. Whether you realize it or not, it's still controlling and dictating your every decision and your every move. So, you know, that's, what was it? Like drinking poison, expecting the other person to die, right? Like,
Right.
or it's like, it's easy. I tell people to let it go and they're like, well, it's not that easy. It was like, I think letting it go is easier than carrying it, right? Like,
Yeah,
if I told you to, if you're holding this massive anchor and you're trying to walk across and I'm telling you let it go, but like, it's not that easy. Well, it's not easy to walk dragging an anchor either.
Right.
And so whether you realize it or not, that trauma from your past, you're reliving it every day, right? Like you're stuck in that perpetual loop of responding to the trauma that hurt you every single day, whether it's there or not. And that's causing your relationships to not be as connected as maybe you like for them to be.
Every relationship.
Yeah.
And not just interpersonal relationships.
No.
I mean, not just personal relationships, interpersonal relationships, business relationships, every relationship.
You're approaching them all through the perspective of the traumatized person who's never healed. So that person that you're talking to inevitably is trying to hurt you or get one over on you or you know, whatever it is. And so my response to that would be that, so number one, it is still hurting you and you are reliving it. Number two, a good therapist isn't going to make you sit there and like, this is my life, you know, like that's not really how it goes down. they can, there's ways of talking about your response to trauma without actually going that deep into the trauma itself. Like there's ways of doing that. And a very skilled therapist knows how to do that with you to where you don't feel like you're being dragged through the coals again. Right. There's ways of talking about, how you're responding to something and why you're responding to something. Right. Because at the end of the day, back then really doesn't matter. What matters is right now. Right. Like I'm living in the now. So how do I stop this now? And if I realize it doesn't matter what the specific trauma is, as long as I realize it's the trauma that's causing me to be distrusting of this person, then I can start the process of telling myself, hey, it's unreasonable to not trust this person. They haven't given me any reason to trust it. That's my old injuries coming to me. And when you're that self-aware, then it's easy to progress forward and change your future. And in that scenario that I just gave, at no point did I address anything of what that trauma might have been. But we did address that the trauma itself is causing you to look at things differently and treat them differently. So, once again, this notion that you're going to go in and talk to a therapist and you're going to be box of tissues cried and you're just going to be depressed with it. That's not the case, man. Like if that's happening, go get a new therapist, dude. Like that's not the right one for you. And don't let one therapist dictate to you what therapy looks like.
Right.
Like,
Well, you might need to cry.
Yeah, maybe. Absolutely.
Because there's some therapists that love making people cry. They think that's how that's how they measure their success.
Yeah, some of them.
Some of them are like Medusa, man. Don't look at him. As soon as you look at him, you start
Yeah.
crying.
But you can go to if one therapist just isn't working for you, right? Like if you don't feel like you're getting benefit from it, right? If you're not seeing things in your life kind of change, I don't mean like night and day.
Right.
It could just be a gradual change. Maybe you're thinking about things. Who knows? There's different barometers that you can use, but if you're feeling that it's hurting you more than helping you, don't quit therapy. Just quit that therapist, right? Like if you go to the restaurant, right? Let's say you eat fast food and that fast food messes up your order. You don't never go to fast food ever again, right? Like you might look at that one differently, but even then you're most likely going to go back and you're just going to say, hell, hey, it just happens. So don't let the one person in therapy that is talking to you ruin therapy as a whole. Each individual therapist comes with their own set of skills, their own knowledge, their own techniques. And if this one isn't right for you, then maybe the next one will be. But don't stop because you owe it to yourself to find the why, man. You owe it to yourself to fix the why and have a happy, peaceful life. Because a happy, peaceful life is what we're all striving for, whether you realize it or not. You might have a different definition of what that is for you or how to get to it, but make no mistake, your goal is a happy, peaceful life. Whatever you think happy and peaceful looks like, that's what your goal is. And you're not going to achieve that if you got all these roadblocks in your way.
Yeah, what I was thinking about right there is that how many people probably have paid a Miss Cleo instead of playing a therapist.
Yes. Call me now.
Yeah, people look for answers like in the stars and in their horoscopes, and they'll go to Casadega, like this town here near us. You know what I mean? That spiritualist camp that people go there and get their palms read or get their futures read. I bet you there's more people that have done that than actual therapy.
Oh yeah, of course.
So
yeah, I know people that would do the psychic readings and stuff before they would ever go to a therapist.
Yeah, my wife. There's no, you go gay.
My wife,
dude. I do this for a living, and my wife will not go to a therapist ever.
Wife,
it just won't happen. Yeah.
Yeah.
Probably because we've hired and fired so many of them. So she's seen behind the curtain. So she's seen behind the curtain, she's like, I'm like, babe, it's not. You're focused on the negative ones, the bad ones.
Right.
There's some really great therapists, the Aaron Moores of the world. Your mind's probably one of our favorite therapists of all time, right?
Yeah.
So
if we could duplicate a bunch of him, he
yeah.
gives therapy a great name.
Yeah, I love him. Him. So here's the real deal. We got to start closing up. But look, if you don't, the thing why everyone could benefit from therapy is because there's a value system that we place upon ourselves. If you think you put a value system on others, think about how you judge others. Think about how you look at other people and how like earlier in the broadcast, early on, you had said something about the chismoso. What is chismoso called? Gossiping. You were talking about gossiping. You said like that's therapy. Like when you go share with other people. Yeah. And all I was thinking in my head is I get chismosos. You know what I mean? Like I was thinking about gossiping, and a lot of us just share information about other people and just like we expel a lot of energy that way because it entertains us. It just does. It entertains us to kind of knock some people around verbally in our head, right? You know, it's an escape from our own stuff. It's escape from our own shame, escape from our own pain, escape from our own value system. But if you put a value system on other people, I just want you to understand that you're doing that to yourself, but you may not be speaking it. You may not be admitting it. And you may think that nobody notices it. But when you do that, you tend to sabotage your life. If you think less of yourself and you're thinking poorly of yourself, you tend to put yourself in situations that don't end up well for you. And instead of truly searching for what is it about this scenario, see, because if you go to your friend and go, what is it about me? Your friend is naturally going to say, it's not about you, girl. It's him. Partly right, but partly wrong. No, there is something about what you're putting into it. Only people that are close to you, they don't want to hurt you, and they feel like they don't know how to do it skillfully enough to not hurt you. And then some people, they say it so unskillfully that they're just jerky when they say, they go, I'm just being real. What? I'm just telling you how it is. Yeah, but it's not that you're not being truthful. It's just you're doing it in a very rude way. You have no tact or ability in communicating it. And that's why it's better when it's someone else, and it's got to be requested. You know, you can't just it can't be unsolicited.
Yeah.
It's got to be requested, right?
Yeah.
But if you're out there sabotaging your life, that's a problem. And you know, the main thing about if you're ever going to seek therapy is you got to be willing to grow. We all grow. We all adapt. We all mold to the next adventure. We all mold to the next situation. It's just the way it is. If you're exactly the same all your life, you're very concrete in your thinking. And let me tell you something. Nobody can grow plants in concrete. That's not a healthy environment to nurture anything. You got to be more like what, Trinity?
Be like water.
There you
Water
go.
flows.
Be like water.
Pour water in a cup
that.
becomes cup.
That's right. And one very important thing Trinity says is shop around. Shop around. Don't, if you go to a therapist and it doesn't feel right, something's just not good for you in that. And not that they don't agree with you, because they're not supposed to agree with you. But if you don't feel safe in that situation, if you don't feel heard, if you don't feel like the person is able to absorb what you're giving, then shop around, get another one. If you feel like your therapist is always on pause, waiting to just say the same thing and not and is more judgment in their eyes, if they have a very judgmental look to them, and you're not feeling like they're absorbing what you're saying and able to kind of encourage you to kind of like vent more, then that's not the therapist for you. Find another one. Anyway, with that, I don't think we need to go with this at this point in time, because we're out of time, Trinity.
That we are.
So tell everybody what stations we're on right now and how they can listen, follow us, and if they want to hear more about this show, another show, all that other good stuff, Trinity.
Well, as always, on Mondays, you can catch us on WOKB 1680 AM or 100.7 FM. And then at your leisure, you can catch us on Facebook, YouTube, or Twitch live, or any of your major podcasting platforms under Dope and Dharma. And then, as always, you can follow us on social media. He is at the Dope Doctor, and I'm at the Dharma Guy.
That's right. Shaw, I know you got some good shows coming up with the All Goods and stuff like that after this show. So maybe it's time for Shaw to take away. What do you say, Trinity? Is it time for him to take it away?
I think it is.
Adios, amigos. It's time for a taco. Goodbye.